America's Most Wanted is a TV series that first aired in 1988 and officially ended in 2012. The premise of the show was to share the background information of ongoing cases in the US in an effort to obtain information. Reenactments and interviews were effectively used to express details of each case. The suspects were the true focus of the show, though. Each segment published photos and descriptions of suspects that were deemed most wanted, and oftentimes the show successfully helped investigators. Unfortunately, though, not every suspect was caught. Number 5. 23-year-old Victor Gennaro was working as a Wells Fargo armored truck employee in 1983. On September 12th, Gennaro physically assaulted his two coworkers and managed to overpower them. He told one of them, "I've got nothing against you, I'm just tired of working for other people." He then fled with $7 million in cash. An investigation quickly followed, and it turned out Gennaro was not working alone. He was allegedly involved with the Puerto Rican terrorist group known as Los Macheteros. Officers assumed that Gennaro was smuggling across the American and Mexico border. After laying low for a while, an anonymous tip suggested that Gennaro traveled to Cuba. He's believed to still be hiding under the radar somewhere in Cuba. Gennaro holds the record for the longest time on FBI's top 10 most wanted list. He was listed for 32 years and 2 months. Eventually, Gennaro was removed from the list because his probable location means that he'll likely never be apprehended by the Cuban government. Some investigators believe that Cuba may have even funded the heist. Gennaro was featured on America's Most Wanted shortly after his escape. The segment revisited the crime and provided viewers with photo evidence of the thief. At this time, he's been on the run for 36 years. Number 4. 6-year-old Iriana De Jesus was reported missing by her mother on July 29, 2000. A search for the child covered a large area for over 5 days. The search inevitably ended, though, because Iriana's body was discovered. The body was found in the basement of an apartment building. It was confirmed that Iriana had been assaulted and strangled. She was placed in a trash bag with her shirt covered in blood and sat just a few feet from her. A few weeks before this all occurred, an important immigrant known as Carlos was offered a job as a handyman. The man that hired him, Jorge Contreras, explained that Carlos was homeless and would often sleep on the complex property or in empty units. The building where Iriana's body was found allegedly served as a temporary home for Carlos during his time at the job. Contreras told police that Carlos vanished shortly after the girl's disappearance. It's assumed that Carlos was an alias for Alexis Flores, a man with a lengthy criminal past that included charges of theft, assault, and much more. The t-shirt found next to the victim displayed a political logo. Contreras, upon seeing the shirt during an interview, said that he'd given the shirt to Carlos when he first started working. DNA testing found proof of Iriana's blood, but it also offered a second DNA sample of the suspect. In 2007, updated DNA testing technology confirmed that the second sample belonged to Alexis Flores, aka Carlos. Ever since the body was found, a manhunt has been ongoing for Carlos. He was added to the FBI's Most Wanted list and was featured on an episode of America's Most Wanted. In the episode, producers created a reenactment scene based on the evidence that was available and what was assumed to have happened. The show also offered a previous mugshot of Carlos and an updated sketch. Viewers were informed that he could be hiding in Honduras, his place of birth, or back in the United States living under the radar. A warning was added that described him as armed and extremely dangerous. Number 3. On April 10, 2001, the home of Mary and Robert Fisher exploded around 8 a.m. Firefighters were immediately notified and reported to the scene. The initial explosion was strong enough to collapse the front portion of the house. A series of smaller explosions occurred, which were related to paint cans and gun ammo that had been present in the home. Firefighters were forced to stay a distance away from the home until the smaller explosions had ended. Several firefighters were injured on the scene, but were able to control the blaze and stop it from affecting the other homes. Inside the house, Mary Fisher and her 2 children were found to be deceased. It seemed that their deaths were related to the fire, but more tests revealed that the family had actually been murdered. Earlier on the same morning of the explosion, Mary was shot in the head and the children had their throats cut. Robert Fisher, the husband and father of the family, was nowhere to be found. He instantly became the main suspect of the case. Police believe that Robert was threatened by Mary's claims to file for divorce. Robert pulled out a gas line from the home, which was located in the back of the house, and he then allegedly lit a candle and fled the scene. This setup provided Robert with a 10-hour window to make his escape. A nationwide bulletin was issued to arrest Robert. On April 20th, Mary's car and the family dog, Blue, were found near a national forest in Arizona. Investigators searched the immediate area but found no trace of Robert. Professional cavers pointed out that the investigators failed to search the abundance of caverns and caves deep in the forest. They speculate that Rob could have been hiding in one of them. They also believe that it's possible Robert died in the forest after getting lost, starving, or taking his own life. Fisher was added to the FBI's list of most wanted. He was also featured in the show America's Most Wanted in the episode titled The Dirty Dozen, which shared the top 12 most wanted fugitives of the entire show. A $100,000 reward has been offered for any information, and since the crime, police have allegedly received numerous tips allegedly pointing to Robert's whereabouts. In 2004, a Canadian man was arrested because he shared a shocking resemblance to Robert. DNA testing and other identification, though, proved that he was not the wanted man, and he was later released. So far, every lead has been a dead end. Robert Fisher is still on the run and considered one of America's most wanted fugitives. Number 2. Former United States Foreign Service officer William Bradford Bishop Jr. is wanted for allegedly killing 5 members of his own family. On March 1st, 1976, William left his job in Foggy Bottom, Washington, D.C. after learning he would not receive the promotion he anticipated. He told his secretary that he wasn't feeling well. Officers believe he stopped at his bank and withdrew several $100s. He then went to a nearby mall to purchase a sledgehammer and a gas can. After the mall, he stopped at a gas station and a hardware store. He filled the gas can as well as his own car and bought a shovel and a pitchfork. William arrived home at around 7 p.m. and then killed his wife. When his mother returned to the home, he then did the same to her and finished up with his 3 children. He loaded their bodies into his station wagon and drove to North Carolina, where he placed them in a shallow grave and set them on fire. Witnesses reported seeing him later that same day in Jacksonville, North Carolina, purchasing a pair of tennis shoes at an athletic store. Witnesses spotted him with the family dog and a woman who described him as dark-skinned. On March 10th, after about a week of the murders, a neighbor called police to perform a wellness check on the Bishop family. The neighbor was concerned after not seeing the family leave the home at all in several days. When officers arrived, they found blood on the front porch steps and inside the home. Dental examinations confirmed that the Bishop family victims were the bodies found in North Carolina. After this, an investigation began and a manhunt was issued for William. On March 18th, William's car was found near the Great Smoky Mountains National Park in Tennessee. The car contained dog treats, William's medication, a shotgun, an axe, a shaving kit, and a bloody blanket. Investigators speculate that William may have entered the flow of hikers along the Appalachian Trail. Bloodhounds were used to track William's scent, but the effort was unsuccessful. A few days later, a grand jury indicted William on 5 counts of first-degree murder. Unfortunately, though, William has still not been found. In media, William was featured in an episode of Unsolved Mysteries, which encouraged viewers to keep a lookout for the criminal. And later, he was also featured on America's Most Wanted, where a reenactment story, photos and sketches of William were aired. Number 1. A chainsaw murder might sound like a wild creation shown in a slasher movie or some horror film. Jose Corona actually carried out his heinous crimes by using a chainsaw, though. Mariah and Jose Corona had been together for at least 20 years. They had 6 children together, and most would blindly assume that they were the average big happy family. Friends and relatives likely never expected the messy crime that occurred in their Louisville, Texas home. On April 26, 2010, a postal service employee arrived at the Corona home to deliver mail. He was taken off guard and shocked when he found a woman's body lying in the front yard. The worst part is that it wasn't just the vessel of the deceased woman, but also the torso of a woman without limbs and a head. He instantly called police, who arrived a short time later to begin their investigation. Upon entering the home and analyzing the available evidence, officers concluded that Jose Corona came home from work one day wielding a chainsaw. He used it to cut off the limbs of Mary while she was still unconscious. He dragged her throughout the house, creating a path of blood. At first, he left Mary alone and watched her bleed out, but eventually he used the weapon to remove her head. Finally, done with his twisted chore, he carried what was left of her outside and dropped her on the front yard to be found. He then fled the scene in his 2005 Toyota Sequoia with a Texas license plate. Investigators issued a nationwide manhunt for Jose almost immediately, but few leads poured in at first. His car was found later abandoned in a Walmart parking lot near Bradford, Texas, which was about a 30-minute drive from his Louisville home. After leaving his car behind, he somehow managed to travel 30 minutes to Dallas, where he rented a 1991 gold two-door Ford Ranger, but the truck was never returned and has still not been found. The latest theory is that Jose fled to Mexico the day after the killing. He was featured on an episode of America's Most Wanted, where a disturbing reenactment was produced. The episode also published old photos and updated sketches for Jose for viewers. Jose has still not been found, and no new leads have been reported in at least 8 years. While he may be out hiding in Mexico, he also has extended family in Euless, Grapevine, Mineola, Austin, and Houston, Texas, as well as in Oklahoma and Washington.